Hi there, Rissa here for a video depicting and explaining kneeling mobility of the feet and ankles. This is a request from somebody, so as always, send in your requests and I'll address the issues to the best of my capability. The ankle and feet are of course related to the calves, what comes above it, and then to the knees and the hips. So the feet and the ankles really relate to everything. We walk around and our bodies are designed in that way. So addressing the feet and the ankles will help everything. My Thai massage teacher in Thailand said, you make ankle happy, you make whole body happy. So this is for your whole body, actually. Again, a specific request was for the kneeling position in yoga called vajrasana. And this is vajrasana. It's a little bit easier for me, okay? So heels or hips sitting above the heels. You can see I've got, my foot is pretty pointed here. I've got some plantar flexion of the ankle going on and even a little bit of flexion of the toes. So to be able to sit upright in this way requires a lot of flexibility for your calves. Oh, not your calves, more the front of your calves, your shins, the tibialis anterior specifically, and also the quads. It's a big stretch to be able to flex at the knee this tightly. So there's a lot going on here, deceptively simple. Seems like it's just about the feet and ankles, but it's not. Personally, I really like to use a foam roller. So if you don't have a foam roller, that's okay. We're just gonna do a bit of self-massage for the quads, for the shins, and also for the hamstrings and calves, gastrocsoleus mainly. And then you could even, I don't have a tennis ball here with me now, tennis ball or lacrosse ball to the bottom of the foot and the shin for a little bit more specific self-massage. So come to a seated position. Let's start with the calves. Bring the calves on top of the foam roller, post up on your hands behind you, and just bend your knees forward and backward. You might be able to see that I'm turning my knees to the left and turning my knees to the right as I roll, accessing different aspects of the soleus, Achilles tendon, and then all the way up to the gastrocnemius, closer to the back of the knees. Okay. While I'm here, I'm just gonna skip up over the knee to my hamstrings. So I'm gonna roll out, again, turning my toes to the left, turning my toes to the right. I'm really rotating at the whole thigh bone here, internally and externally. Okay. So might as well pop on up to the glutes while I show you, again, knees to the left, knees to the right. I'm above my sits bones and in between sort of my, now I'm to the right of my sacrum and to the left, getting the meaty parts. While I roll these out, I just wanted to give a little disclaimer that it's been my experience that weak glutes can lead to overactivation of the quads, the tib anterior, and really just lead to you pointing your foot more than if you grounded through the heel and activated the posterior chain just while you're standing. And this happens to a lot of women who wear a lot of high heels and also to a lot of runners because you usually run on your toes. I know some of you do like a heel striking technique, but these are just general patterns, okay? So we got the back side. Now let's get the front side. We'll start with the quads. Come down into your forearms, lay the quads, front of the thighs, over the foam roller. And then kind of a forearm plank, we're gonna roll forward and backward. Same thing, toes to the left, toes to the right, rotating at the thigh bone, getting different parts of the quads. After that, and many people skip this, bring your shins onto the foam roller. Okay, so you can get your tibialis anterior. If it's foamy, it's not gonna hurt your shin bone. Also, you can kind of turn your toes in toward one another. I don't know if you can see that. So you can get the meaty part, like the shin muscles, not the shin bones really. If you find a sore spot, you can hang out there. But this is gonna break up some adhesion, some stickiness between the fibers of the muscles and the fascia in general. Okay, so one good pass with the foam roller. Now let's come forward onto our knees. Let's try a toe crunch first. So flex the toes and use your hands if you need to, especially for the pinky toes, to make sure they are grounded as well. For the least amount of pressure, hips forward, hands down. I pop up onto my loose fist or fingertips if my wrists don't want this much extension. And then you can kind of pump forward and backward. My knees pop. This is something they do. It doesn't hurt. You might be able to hear it. Rocking into and out of this stretch is one way to have it feel a little more comfortable for your body when it's something that is really tough that you're working on. Okay, so it's rocking back and forth. If you can, sink into it and hold. If that's okay, then walk the hands back and perch. What we don't want is distortion of the ankle. So we don't want the heels going out, and we don't want them collapsing in either. We want the outer ankle in line with the outer knee, and no herniations of the ankle, as my yoga teacher Tony likes to say. So this is one toe crunch position. That'll open things up. And on the plantar fascia, backs of the toes, and you might feel it in the Achilles tendon and back of the calves as well. Now let's bring tops of the feet down. Can take some gentle movements here. If this is really tight, grab a pillow or a rolled up towel or blanket. We're going to kneel over it, giving a little less plantar flexion, a little less of a sharp angle for the ankles. Okay, so as you can see, it's like they're dorsiflexed. The toes are like flexing forward a little bit more. And same thing here, we're gonna rock forward and backward to your preferred depth. This is gonna take time, okay? Your ankles got real tight for a reason. Probably repeated patterns over and over and over again for years. So it's gonna take some time for them to loosen back up with intentional focus and practice, okay? So if you can, sink back. Remember, you can open the bend in the knee too. Sometimes it's the quad itself that needs opening. But this rocking forward and backward, if this is okay with you, you can bring head over shoulders, over hips. The further forward your head and more supported on your hands, the less pressure. The more you bring your head back, unsupported by your hands, the less pressure. I didn't show this with the toe crunch, but you can also come into further hip extension, and this will stretch even more. I'm gonna flare the tops of my toe knuckles down into the floor to engage this whole line so that it's not just a passive stretch, okay? So we want some strength there as well. I'm gonna lean back and forward. Again, my outer ankles are in line with my outer knees, so I've got good alignment, good engagement, support at the joints. The knees might lift up a little bit, that's okay, so long as there's no sharp pain in the joints at any point. If there's any sharp pain, especially right at the joint, back off, okay? You can come into a virasana variation. This is where you can really start to work the stretch in the quads. So in this variation, the heels come a bit further apart so that the hips can sink down in between the feet. Sometimes I need to push, like rotate, manipulate my calf muscles out of the way so that my knees can close a little more tightly. If you've had knee surgery, this might not be accessible for you at this point, and that's okay. Take your time working into and out of it to the best of your ability, all right? So once you're in virasana, you can continue to work back. You'll be able to work back a little bit further and make sure that you've got a bit of a posterior tilt going on in the pelvis. Okay, so I'm not keeping my back arched and then just arching down with an anteriorly tilted pelvis. I want to tuck my tailbone to enhance the sense of stretch in the quads. Moving towards supta virasana, keep the tummy engaged Rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscles pulling up on the pubic bone to tuck the tailbone. And maybe you can come back to the elbows, forearms. Maybe you can come all the way down, maybe not. I've got a pretty big arch here, so this isn't, this is something that I can work on. And one way that I can work on opening the quads without this depth, without this extreme knee flexion, is to come up, come up slowly, is to come up into camel pose. My favorite way to enter camel pose, notice how I brought my shins closer together, more of a vajrasana variation. Walk the hands back, push down into the knees and scoop the hips up and forward. Strong abdomen supports the low back. I feel a really big stretch in my quads here. And the more I walk my hands forward, the more hip extension I've got going on as well. So this is a pretty deep back bend. No need to seek the feet really. Just stop at whatever point you feel comfortable, okay? So this is great. Any amount of increased range of motion is cause for celebration. And again, it's the diligence and the repetition over time that are going to be most helpful. We've done a lot of flexion of the knee, so let's open it up. Crawl the hands forward, crawl the knees backward on, or tucking the toes, and let's bring the hips down into a sphinx pose variation. Tops of the feet down to the mat, this time with the knees extended so the legs are straight. Push down into the tops of the feet to lift the knees away from the mat and really straighten the legs. Tuck the tailbone, push the pubic bone down, pull the belly away from the mat. Elbows are shoulder distance apart. Elbows aren't this far forward and they're also not back here, okay? Bring the elbows about underneath the shoulders, maybe just slightly forward. This way I can pull my chest forward and my shoulders back. Long line of the body. I like to stretch my neck here. And after a moment in Sphinx pose, release down. Hands underneath the shoulders. Let's tuck the toes for a gentle cobra. And then wave back into either puppy pose or child's pose with the toes tucked. Hands are going to push forward and down to sink the hips down, so long as this feels okay to the knees. You can rest forehead or chin to the mat. And now let's come forward. So those are just a few variations of vajrasana, virasana, and balasana, child's pose, yoga postures to help open up the ankles. There's a lot of other things you can do to help the ankles, but we'll stick with just the kneeling positions for now. Thank you for the request. Thank you for watching. Keep the requests coming. Namaste.